Hello and welcome to another episode of the GC Sunscast. I'm your host Shane, and joining me on the line is Tom. Welcome to the show once again, Tom.
Yeah, g'day Shane. How are you this week?
Yeah, it's been good. The Gold Coast Suns had a mixed bag of weekends. You know, we won in the academy, we won in the Neafl, and
Finally
fell just short in the AFL.
Yeah, it was better than the previous week where we couldn't win anything, and a lot of very promising signs to come from the lower grades.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I've had some questions put to me this week, and that is, how can they listen to the GC Sunscast? So, what happens is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m, we go live on Spreaker, so you can head on over to Spreaker.com/GC Sunscast and find us. But the easier way is it automatically adds a link to our Facebook page. So the best thing to do is just go to Facebook.com/GC Sunscast and click on the link. You can also download the show later. We'll put up episodes on YouTube if it's even easier for you. So you've really got a wide variety of ways to listen to the show, either live where you can interact and chat with us, or download it on to your favourite podcast service, or just watch it on YouTube whenever it suits you. Now, to help us run the show, we rely on support from our listeners. And the best way to provide support is over at Patreon. So you can head on over to patreon.com/GC Sunscast and donate to the show. This week's, we'd like to thank our donors: Old Soul, Jack's Dad, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, Chris Moore, and James Wood. Thanks, guys. You're doing wonders here, helping us out with the show, and it goes a long way, however little you're donating. If you can't afford to donate, just like and subscribe to our Facebook and our YouTube. And we also have Twitter now. Tom keeps on top of the Twitter, so you can find us at GC Sunscast on Twitter.
Yeah, and look, every like and share and comment helps the Facebook and Twitter machine sort of generate random. We all know the algorithms are sort of nefarious and mysterious, but every little bit helps. Everyone who does currently like and share and comment and subscribe and all that, the rest of it, you're helping to spread the word, because there are people out there who don't know about us. We've been around for a bit over a year, but yeah, we started very small and we're growing every week, aren't we?
Yeah, we definitely are. It's just good to talk about the Gold Coast Suns and have a chat, and we'd love to interact with the listeners and the fans. So yeah, we'd love to see you guys live. Jump on and chat to us on the show, or if you can't do that, Facebook comments are fantastic. YouTube comments. We just love interacting with you all, and that's why we started this show, is to build a bit of a community that we can all interact with and talk about the Suns. All right, well, let's get into the show. The first bit isn't really news. We don't have too much news, but I do have a couple of sneaky rumours. So, Tom, there is a couple of, one in particular, first-year player who is very close to signing a new deal.
Fantastic.
That's all I'll say.
There's 6 of them, so put us out of our misery.
Okay. Looks like Rankin could be close to signing a contract extension. And from all reports, the others aren't too far to follow either. So hopefully we'll know something within the month when Gold Coast Suns decide to finalise everything and let the fans know.
Fantastic.
But that is just rumours. I can't.
Haven't we? So.
Yeah, that is just rumours. I can't officially confirm anything. But yeah, we'll know soon enough whether I'm right or wrong. I'm happy to turn around and say I got it wrong, but let's just see where it goes. Okay.
Well, look, those guys do have a 2-year contract automatically, so it would be an extension. It's the same kind of thing that, if you recall, Bowes, Brodie, Ainsworth and Scrimshaw signed up to. So, we did pretty well with 3 of those guys. So, it's really more supporting that whole theme that we've got players who are committing long term to what we really want to hear, because we've had so many people leave. So yeah, it would be great, but I'm sure we'll hear something about that, because those rumours are getting more persistent.
Yes. And, we need there are some re-signings. There's been talk about Peter Wright potentially re-signing soon as well. So I'm sure we'll start getting some news coming out of the club. I think it was the first episode of the Gold Coast Suns members podcast. I can't remember what they've just called it. I think it's Inside 50.
Yes.
I remember Mark Evans saying in the first episode that they had a couple of announcements to come regarding player signings, and at this stage I think we only got one from them, and that might have been the Alex Sexton signing.
Rory Thompson, that's it. So I presume Mark Evans is holding a card behind his back and just isn't ready to show it just yet. All right, well, let's get into the football news, because that's why we're all here. So, the Gold Coast Suns, 18 goals, 13, 121, defeated Northern Territory 7 goals, 9, 51. Yes, that's not the AFL side, that is the Neafl side. And it is the first win for the Neafl side in 2019. Tell us how it went down, Tom. Well, it was the first time that the Suns had beaten the Thunder in Darwin in 9 attempts, so, pretty amazing. Look, the team came out on fire in the first quarter, and they knocked up 50 points. And you're not really going to get beaten from there. Look, the Northern Territory weren't playing badly. This was a game where the Suns players who have had their season sort of delayed by injury, in the case of Sean Lemons, he kicked 3 goals in the first quarter, and his little mate Fitzroy Greenwool, who's a bit of a favourite of ours, the Neafl Rising Star nominee, by the way, he also chipped in with a couple of goals. They finished with 4 goals each, and Ben King, who were all sort of eagerly anticipating him putting in some big Neafl returns, well, he's been switched up from the back to the forward line, and he kicked 4 goals and was very influential. Yeah. It was a team effort. It was a really strong team effort against a team who's not so bad.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Northern Territory aren't having the greatest of years. They've only had 1 win as well. But back to Ben King, yeah, he kicked 4 goals, had 9 marks and 3 tackles. That's superb for a player of his size.
Yeah, he was getting around the ground. He wasn't just at home. He was the sort of the forward 50 player. He'd often be the only one up there. But when the ball was sort of coming his way, he'd get on his bike and be the first one there. He'd bring the ball to ground if he couldn't mark it. He'd take players on. He's very skillful at ground level for such a monstrous bloke.
So do you think this is a sign that the Gold Coast Suns, if Ben King plays, is going to play forward for the AFL side? Because he was drafted as a key defender, even though he has the flexibility to swing forward. So do you think the Gold Coast Suns are currently thinking we've got a future tall key forward here?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you remember with our original crop of key forwards back in the day, and we've had some successful guys who've all played, 100 games of AFL footy, who started off as key forwards and then they went back and played in defence. So we had 4 guys at Foundation who were all picked as key forwards. 2 of them have emerged as key defenders, and 2 of them have emerged as number 1 key forwards. And only one of them plays for us, and he's injured. So we won't even name them. People can figure it out for themselves. Ben King is one of those guys who, on the depth chart, he's about 8th in the defence, because he's a bit too skinny and he's too inexperienced. He's young, but in as a key forward, especially if there are injuries, he's not too far away from an AFL debut. Obviously, we've got Peter Wright, who's going better than some people think in the AFL side. But what other really tall forward? We've got some medium talls, but what other really tall forward have we got now that Lukosius has been taken out of that forward, that AFL team, out of that forward line? and didn't play, so therefore unlikely to go straight into it. And then there's a Neafl bye the following week. So you'd have to say Ben King's in unless Lukosius comes out and absolutely tears it up this week, Ben King's probably the next man up for an AFL call-up if they don't even just whack him in this week.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Ben King has shown a bit of both. He took a bit of time to start. He didn't show too much in the JLT games. But
he didn't. But he played most of his time back.
Yeah, and it took him a bit of time to find his motor in the Neafl. But the last 2-3 weeks, we're really starting to see Ben King show his dominance at that level.
Yeah, playing, and I mean, sometimes he's only playing half a game and still getting 3 goals. So he was very, very impressive with his 4 goals, and they really shared it around, didn't they? There were a lot of goal kickers, a lot of multiple goal kickers too, which is a good sign. But I can't go past Sean Lemons. He was a man playing amongst boys, kicking goals at will. His radar for goal is back on, as we know in the last couple of years. He can really be errant. Even the goal that he missed was still worth taking. 4 goals, 1 he ended up with. But he played on limited time, played about 3 quarters, and he still got 28 possessions and was man of the match. So he could be straight back in the side.
Yeah, potentially. I really like the idea of Lemons coming straight back in. But who else was his compatriots in the midfield in the Neafl? Riscatelli had 30 disposals in the goal, and so did Brodie.
Yeah, Brodie was terrific. In fact, from the very beginning, Brodie seemed like he was in command. He had the ball on a string. He was making clearances out of the middle as easy as you like. Tom Nichols is playing really well as our second ruckman. So there's a lot of really good signs. It all just seemed to come together. Riscatelli is really marshalling this Neafl team, and I think we speculated that maybe his being re-rookied was just to be the leader in the Neafl side, but you can't just lead on your own. Tom Nichols was the captain of the Neafl team, so that's another thing for him is to show his leadership. We know he's popular around the club. We know he's been there since day one, but he's stuck behind the captain now, so actually taking charge of being the captain of the Neafl team is a really good sign for us, because your number one fear for this season is that Witts gets injured. Well, they're not like for like, but we're not going to be suddenly getting beaten by 100 points if Nichols has to come in and replace Witts due to injury.
No, the depth is there, and it's only going to get better as we look at the injury list for Tuesday, May the 7th. So I'm reading the injury list here of the AFL website. At this stage, the Gold Coast Suns hasn't updated us with their alpha. Is it alpha report?
We best not dwell on that because it's sponsored. So if we stuff it up,
so we've got Rory Thompson and Harrison Wigg out for the season with their knees. Brad Shears listed as TBC from his fractured hand the other week. We have Braden Crossley, hamstring, 3 to 4 weeks. Now this is where it starts to get interesting. We have Calamachi and Sam Fletcher, both with quad injuries at 1 to 2 weeks away.
That seems a lot less than 1 week ago, so that's good news.
Yeah. And now for the tests. We have Corey Ellis coming back from an ankle, Isaac Rankin coming back from a hamstring, and Lockie Weller coming back from a hamstring. So if all goes to plan, those 3 boys, Ellis, Weller and Rankin, should all be playing either in the AFL or Neafl this week. Now, I think it's a bit of a stretch, except for maybe Weller, to jump straight into the AFL. So it looks like we'll see Ellis and Rankin probably come straight back into the Neafl this week.
Yeah, terrific. That'll be another source of goals, which we don't seem to lack. And Rankin will play Neafl. He's being managed. He's only a young bloke, and getting injured before the AFL season even began was a setback for him. So we want him to play on managed time. And there's a Neafl game this weekend against Aspley, and so there's not another academy program where they're going to be playing AFL level players. And then the following week's a Neafl bye. So unless he's going to make an AFL debut before we think is possible, he's going to be managed and probably by sort of round 10 or 11, he'll be genuinely in the conversation if he can reproduce that kind of form he was showing in the pre-season.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, let's go talking about the AFL side. So West Coast defeated the Gold Coast Suns 80-57. And it was really a tale of two halves. It was the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde performance that the Gold Coast Suns produced, and to the same extent West Coast produced as well. I guess a lot of people coming out of that game was questioning whether the Suns were that good or were West Coast that bad by the end of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it looked really promising when Powell kicked that goal at the beginning. And, it was tit for tat for a while. And then second quarter, the real gap, not in talent, but the gap in experience showed. It wasn't West Coast's young, mercurial guys. It was their seasoned campaigners who were like, look, we've got to get 4 points here. Otherwise, we're not going to have home advantage. And when the finals come around, real business-like performance. And then, as you say, second half.
Yeah.
Gold Coast kicked first goal, and then things are looking good.
Yeah, so before we jump into the second half stuff, we got to address what happened in the first half. Basically, the first half, the Suns were down by 39 points at half-time. The first quarter seemed okay. We were kind of keeping in there for a majority of the quarter. And West Coast were just able to get a couple of easy goals out the back every few minutes. Taking over. And it seemed like in the second quarter then that they really got on a roll, got that momentum going. I think West Coast kicked 5 goals straight. And it pretty much looked all over for Gold Coast. It was a late game. So over here on the East Coast, it was an 8 o'clock start. I was just about ready for bed by half time, but I decided to stay awake just a bit longer, and I'm glad I did. Because the Gold Coast Suns really brought it up, and you could say...
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, when Peter Wright kicked that goal at the beginning of the second quarter, it was back down to 9 points, and it really seemed like the Suns had something to kick at. And then 5 goals, and from players who've been under the pump, a couple of quick goals to Jack Darling. We already have the defenders. Our defenders, we said last week, they're going to have trouble if we go with Hompsch and Collins. They're going to have trouble with Joey Kennedy. And Jack Darling's been in rubbish form, so I sort of said, don't worry about him, but he was the one to worry about.
Yeah, he was. And if we kept going down that path, if the second half played out the way the first half did, we've got a really valid argument for saying the Suns are playing opposition teams into form. Adelaide have just gone off since we played them. Brisbane are back on the winners board again after we played them. And, you could argue West Coast are going to be on the winners board again, but it was that second half that really changed the momentum of the game. And let's just put this into context. I don't know what that is, but let's just put this into context. The same game last year, I think it was round 4, Gold Coast Suns went over to West Coast, and we got pumped. We scored around the same points. I think we might have scored an extra 2 points and got 59 points in that game last year. But West Coast kicked about 140-odd points. So essentially, they won that game by about 80 points. So having lost this game now by 23, that's just about a 10-goal turnaround.
Yeah, totally. And don't forget, last year we actually had the 2 games over there. And so we played Freo and came probably about a similar game to this against Freo, but they just got away from us at the end. When we played the West Coast last year, we were in similar form and a similar place on the ladder. We had 3 wins up our sleeve. and things were we didn't have three, did we? Anyway, a couple of wins up our sleeve, and we were going well, and then they just taught us a lesson. And in this game, we really showed them in the third quarter and fourth quarter, probably for about a quarter and a half, that we were dominating. But when it comes down to it, Shane, we needed to kick 8 goals to 1 to win it, and we kicked 6 goals to 3 and lost by 4 goals. So 6 goals to 3 in the second half is a very good showing. Very happy about that. But we left ourselves with too big a task.
Yeah, our scoring this year hasn't been great. And it hasn't been great for a couple of years, actually. I saw a statistic about our scoring, and I think we were averaging about 80-odd points 3 years ago a game, and last year it was down to around 65. Now we're down to under 60 points a game, our average score. So, yeah, kicking those goals is getting harder and harder every year for us. But we do have some talented first-year players that are goal kickers, and we should hopefully see them by the end of the year start to get their form together. But we had... the stoppages is where we got smashed by West Coast. We had 5 goals, 7-37 West Coast kicked from stoppages, whereas Gold Coast only kicked 2 behinds. And continuing on with stoppages, we got smashed 38-23. So, I mean, it all sort of failed in the middle of the ground for us. I think we still won centre clearances, but stoppages around the grounds, West Coast seemed to have a better setup.
Yeah, it wasn't the middle. It was the centre clearances we did dominate. And Witsy had 60 hit-outs. Like, that's just amazing. That's, 60 I think might be top 10 for the history of AFL. And he's what's his best? 64. So it's not even his best. It's most ruckman dream of those numbers, and we can only get 10 centre clearances. And I think you got to look at the individual guys who did get those centre clearances in the Gold Coast side, and we're looking at Jack Martin with 3, Anthony Miles with 3. So a couple of others chipped in. And, they were sharking. So, Luke Shuey was the main guy for them. They were sharking their centre clearances because we were just winning every single one. Vardy's not an A-grader. He's a backup. He's an AFL player. We know that. But he's not Jared Witts. So we need to... Our guys really need to be taking more advantage of that. And they were probably beating us at the stoppages with that outside pace that they've got.
Not only that, the pressure, I didn't think the pressure was to the level that it needed to be. Prior to the game, we had Ainsworth and I want to say Miles come out in interviews saying that the pressure wasn't up to the level of AFL standard, and that's something they were working on. Yet, you're looking at a stat like tackles, which most of the time is pretty obvious as to the pressure that's being brought. And we were beaten by 87-36. We were out-tackled by West Coast. And we lost the disposal count by 30. So it's not like we had the ball as well. Now, that's a pretty damning stat. West Coast never
win the tackle count.
Yeah.
Never. So their coach was just like, look, you're not going to back up your grand final if you don't lay tackles, and some of you are going to be back in the waffle if you don't make tackles. So that was definitely they were definitely lifting, right, in that first half, and when a team, and I think Stuart, you said it best. The West Coast have got 10 guys who've played more than 150 games of AFL footy, and we've got 1.
Yeah,
and it wasn't talent; it was experience, and our talent showed through, and dare I say it, but our tank. But they had guys like the former Brisbane players,
Elliot
and Yo, making double figures in tackles, and they're not really noted for making tackles like that. So they'll put on notice, those guys. And look, they've won the game fair and square. We both have issue with the umpiring, but I think you pointed out before the show that the around the AFL, and for myself, after watching half a game of Neafl and the Academy game, I didn't watch any other AFL over the weekend, so I can't say. But it seems like the AFL just have a different set of rules for the umpires every week, and we were on the wrong side of it for this, but,
that's another rabbit hole. Let's not go down. So, what did you notice was the difference between the halves? I noticed that the first half we were playing very defensive footy. We went along the wings, went along the outside, and then when we got to about halfway, just past the centre, we'd bomb it long into the forward line, and that the West Coast defenders, McGovern and Barras, they just ate that up. Intercept marks came off each other's man, and in a way we were just wasteful going inside 50.
Yeah, the Eagles will punish you if you go inside 50 without a real plan, and so bombing it in, you're not going to get anything out of them. And even if you manage to get it behind, Jeddah comes along and kicks a worm burner 50 metres onto the chest of a halfback, and then they're away. They've just got some talent in that back line, and freaks. They're not just good guys, they're freaks. They just do things like McGovern took 11 marks. He'll do that every single game, and he'll break your heart with those intercepts. And he doesn't look like a footy player, but he can play footy. He's just brilliant. You wish you had someone like him, because of course every club in the comp had a chance to draft him, and West Coast was smart enough to go, yeah, we'll coach him, we'll play him in the seconds a lot, and then he'll come good, and he bloody did. And of Hearn with his 60-metre bombs that hit the guys in the chest, that what we did differently in the second half was switch it up. We'd switch play across the other side of the ground, which they were doing all day and killing us with it. And then just making it a slight variation from that play, as you said, of just very, very defensively and carefully trying to go kick up the sideline, which West Coast were just lulling us into. It wasn't any skill involved. We were just getting it as far as we'd get it, and then they'd lock us in.
Yeah.
And we'd have to bomb it. So we changed that up and got the belief, and were rewarding leads. I find with the Suns really frustrating. The most frustrating thing is when they stop leading to that guy on the wing who's got the ball. We've got possession. We've got to keep it, and no one's offering a short lead. Or if they do, it gets ignored. So that was happening more. Not that they were ignoring it, but they were taking the option. And, it's because they get stunned for, less than 15 metres. Well, they don't seem to be calling that a lot. Although I did see running too far. I couldn't believe it when that got called. That was amazing. But anyway, the Suns definitely had a change of strategy at halftime, or rather went back to the game plan. And I was going to not finish watching the game, which I never do. And I did finish watching the game. I'm glad I did.
All right. Well, it's time to get into our highlight of the game, otherwise known as the...
Lockie Weller, what a performance!
So, for me, it was Will Powell. In particular, his first goal. I just think that epitomised what the Gold Coast Suns had been missing over the last few weeks. And just seeing Will Powell stand up in his home state was just really great.
Yeah, I loved that. And I straight away thought, good on you, mate. You've come back from concussion's not a fun thing to have, and it can ruin someone's career. But, he did that, and he also nailed a goal in the fourth quarter. But my moment was when Corbett went up for that kind of weird mark, but it was a specky. And he was late in the game, and he went up for it, and he came down a bit injured, but I don't think it was anything serious. It was just landed a bit funny. But he's going to take some good marks, and it was just a sign for me of the future. He certainly, in his first two games, he's rock solid in the team. We need him, and he can play those two roles of high marking forward, but also run around the ground.
Yeah,
so he's a runner.
The future is definitely bright for the Gold Coast Suns. Before we get into our best on ground votes, I just wanted to do some special mentions. Obviously, we talked about Powell. He had 16 disposals, 2 goals and 87%. His speed was noticeable to the Suns. Murdoch was a surprise. He ran 14.9 kilometres, the most of any player on the ground. I mean, that's up there. I've got a mate that works at the grounds at Metricon at Gabba, working with the umpires as well, and he said that the umpires tend to do about 15 to 18 kilometres a game in running. Wow. So, and they're covering the whole ground, and for Jordan Murdoch to do that as well is just really impressive. Fiorini was impressive as well. He only had about the 20-odd disposals, but he was tagged in that first half. And when he was able to break off the chain in that second half, we certainly noticed the difference. All right, well, on to the 3-2-1 votes. My first vote goes to Miles. He had 26 disposals, 1 goal, 5 tackles at 53% efficiency. I really thought he had a huge impact in the middle of the ground and even slotted up with a goal thanks to a bit of a West Coast indiscretion. Jared Harbrow gets the 2 votes, 30 disposals, 83% efficiency. I just loved the way he took the game on, kicking the ball out from the back line. Instead of going wide down the wings, he just took it. No, I'm going straight down the middle. And for the first couple of times, it took the West Coast players off by surprise. But by the end of it, and he was still doing it, he had to shrug off a few blokes and pinpoint those passes, and he was able to get it done. Yeah. And finally, the 3 votes is Jack Martin, 29 disposals, only went at 69% efficiency, but his 10 tackles and his clearances as well. He had a great game. The only downfall is he does tend to try and take on more than he can chew, and he's always looking for that flashy moment, and he just doesn't quite get it.
Yeah, I find though that now he's playing more in the midfield. He doesn't have as much time as he sort of thinks he needs, but also if he's anywhere near the ball, it seems like the defenders are just rabid. They just really want to get him. Because they know what he can do. So it's kind of like opposition defences or opposition teams are basically being coached. You know, if Martin gets the ball, he can kick it off right, he can kick it off left, he can do a lot more, he can evade you. You know, so if he looks like getting the ball at all, jump on him. So I think that's been the tale of his season so far. But I gave him my 3 votes because he's breaking out of that. It's still there. But yeah, he's getting a bit more time and space. He's just lovely off the left or the right. He's not going to be perfect. He's never ever going to be perfect. That's not what you want out of Jack. You want him to create opportunities, because sometimes a chaos ball into the forward 50 that doesn't hit anybody, or it goes to the pack and it hits the ground. Well, you know, that can turn into a goal anyway. So yeah, Jack Martin. Hope we re-sign him soon. Jared Harbrow seems to be getting better as he gets older. I gave him 2 votes for all the reasons you said. He is just as good at rebounding out of 50 as he is as putting it in the forward 50. And I really like the fact that his disposal efficiency is up, because he can tend to just go full belt through the middle and then just blast it. Or if he doesn't get onto his right foot, on his left foot, then his right foot's just not that good. I went away from the midfielders, although I do agree Anthony Miles was, top 6, definitely. And you mentioned Murdoch, and I think sometimes it's important to acknowledge the guys who do their job. It wasn't flashy. He didn't pick up, elite numbers of disposals, but he did get the ball out of 50 6 times and then inside 53 times, which basically shows you that he's coming out of defence and he's getting it into the forward line, which is his job. And he's getting better and better each week. I'm really excited about him as a recruit. He's very strong in defence as well. He's not going to mark up on I saw him a couple of times on Darling, and that's the wrong matchup, but that's how the zone worked out. Jordan Murdoch, keep your eye on him. He's getting more confidence every week, and just does the little things. 3 1-percenters. I love the 1-percenters.
All right. Well, let's move on to the academy talk. We've only got about 10 minutes left, Tom, so sure. We've got a bit to work on with the academy. The Gold Coast Suns have finished their NAB League series as winners. They won the series 4-1 out of the academy sides, despite the fact the Victorian sides are now going to continue on throughout the year playing the series. But what makes up the NAB League Academy Series is the academy sides from Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sydney, GWS, throw in Tasmania and Northern Territory, play each other twice and then play 3 games against sides from the Victorian former TAC Cup League. So all up, they play 5 games, and Gold Coast won 4 and only lost the 1. That loss was to Eastern Rangers. Gold Coast Gold Coast defeated Greater Western Victoria on the weekend, 95-81. And previously, they'd beaten Oakley, Brisbane, and Northern Territory. So, Tom, do you want to tell us about some of these academy stars we can look forward to wearing Suns colours?
Yeah, well, as I said previously, I went to the Academy Q Clash, and I was really impressed with those guys. And the guys I saw live who just, as you know, being at the game live, you see some things that you don't see on telly. They do a brilliant job of telecasting the NAB League, probably better than the Neafl, actually, which is probably something the Neafl needs to look at. But anyway, we won't dwell on that. I loved it because we knew that Connor Bedarick was a player because he was playing really well last year, a major, and also in the Neafl. And he's just come out and he's rated in the top 25 by a lot of people. He'll go probably second round, and we'll get him. So he'll be a player for us. He's grown a tiny bit, but he's still under 180 centimetres. So, he's one of those players to watch. He's a midfielder this year. Last year, he was a small forward. He can go forward and kick the goals, but, he's tough. He's in there and getting it. Our best inside midfielder is Ashton Crossley, and listeners will recognise the surname. Ashton Crossley, not a ruckman. He is a 100. Well, I don't trust these numbers actually because you get different ones every now and then from different places. But anyway, he's about 6 foot tall. He's not as tall as his brother, and he plays a very different role, but very complementary because he's an inside mid. So we could be seeing the Crossley brothers on a regular basis in the Neafl across the rest of this year, and in the future we could be seeing them both in the AFL team. I'll very briefly go over some of the guys who are just brilliant. Matt Conroy, a top ager, who's having his second go at the draft as a ruckman, one of the most dominant ruckmen in the NAB League. He will be playing for Allies, definitely. We've got a couple of underagers, Alex Davies, who didn't play on the weekend because he played for Australia in the under-17s, who won against New Zealand, and Davies was the best on the ground. So next year's draft, we'll be talking about him a lot more. They're calling him... They used to call him the next Jack Bowes because he's just definitely going to be drafted by the Suns. But now they're calling him the next Scott Pendlebury, if that gives you an idea of his ceiling. A couple of other guys I'll mention. There are the brothers who have been following Ethan Dawson. Sorry, I'm going to get this right. Ethan Dawson and Corey Joyce, little brothers. And they're tracking along really well. They may very well get a go in the Allies team, which they'll name probably later this week. Ace Ohio, he's just brilliant. Again, he was one of the best on the ground. And I feel like I'm forgetting someone. Oh, yeah, Josh Gore wasn't so great on the weekend, but still chimed in with the match-winning goal. And he's another one of those little small forwards. And, of course, we all know and love Fitzroy Greenwell, who has actually just been playing Neafl and is playing brilliantly, but he's also eligible for the Allies, who will be increasing their squad from 30 to 50 and this week, and the 20 who'll be picked, they'll be full of Gold Coast Suns. We'll probably get 4, 5, 6 guys named in there.
That's very exciting. Hopefully those Gold Coast Suns will get a few recruited at the end of the year and again at the end of next year. Looking forward to seeing Alex Davies play in the AFL.
Yeah, him and Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson is a key defender, playing sensationally. Towards the end of the season, we'll be seeing him in the Neafl, and the other guys better watch out because he'll be going well. I did forget to mention my mate Dirk Conan, who's been going up and down between the academy and the Neafl. He'll definitely be in the Allies side, and he better bloody well get picked at the end of the year because he's a fantastic player.
So, how did you rate the Gold Coast Suns Academy series? Playing up against some of these Victorian powerhouses like the Eastern Rangers, Oakley Chargers, Greater Western Victoria?
Well, look, the one game that we lost was down there. And so they were in the game until the third quarter, and the opposition just burst them apart. The Oakley game, Oakley are one of the best teams in the comp, but the Oakley side have had some of their better players out. So we didn't play them. The Oakley could have 2 players in the top 2 of the draft, and we didn't play against those guys. But they still had a very, very good team, and we gave them a footy lesson. We flogged them. We beat Brisbane very well. We beat the Northern Territory very, very well. And this game over the weekend, it was close, but what it showed was that this team, which has a lot of 16-year-olds in it, that's the impressive part of it, is they're not big. They're always playing a little bit smaller. They're stacking their teams with 19-year-olds, right? So the final word I'll say is that they are a very, very talented group, and this group this year who go through and get drafted, hopefully by us, will make way for another team that's been blooded now, and they'll go through next year and be equally strong.
All right, well, that's great news. All right, well, before we finish up, we've got a couple of minutes. Do you want to have a prediction at who you think will be cut from the Gold Coast Suns side to take on Melbourne this week?
Yeah, and we didn't have any injuries. Because I'm so bullish about Lemons coming back in, I have to look at who comes out for Lemons, and that's a tough call. You know, is it Sexton, who has had a couple of quiet weeks?
Well, that's my pick.
Is it Darcy McPherson, who's a similar player? I would love to see McPherson and Lemons running around the forward line, getting turnovers and putting that pressure on. But as you've said, Sexton isn't your favourite player right now. No,
he's just not. I just don't think he's doing the 1%ers and the basics. He's had another week where he hasn't recorded a tackle. He only had the 8 disposals and the goal. I just don't think he's doing enough to warrant his spot in the side. Lemons would do the same job, if not better, probably just without the flashiness. And at this stage, I don't think the Gold Coast Suns need flashiness. I think they need hard edge and grit and determination to get through these games. There's
a couple of highlights that Sexton won't like watching.
No,
and he's burnt teammates who are open and going into goal. And he's got not just this week but the weeks before. So
yeah.
You got a good point there.
The other players I reckon are on the edge of being cut from the side would be George Hall-Smith. He only had the 9 disposals and the 1 tackle, and up until half time he only had the 1 disposal. So that's not good enough for a senior player. And
who comes in for him?
I think Hanley comes straight back in.
Right.
And then Young only had 10 disposals and 2 tackles in his first game. Not great, but if Weller's fit, I think Weller pushes in as well. So I could quite easily see Sexton, George Hall-Smith and Young out for Weller, Hanley and Lemons, and that adds a lot of speed to the side, as well as a bit of tackling and aggression.
Yeah, and Melbourne's not going to be an easy opponent. They haven't been in great form, but it doesn't matter. They've got good players. They've got a good coach. They've got a bit more experience than we have, and they're now back on the winners list. So we've got home ground advantage. Really, really looking forward to the game. Unfortunately, we're going to go and see it live, but I think you will be.
Yep, I'm going live, looking forward to it. But Tom, that's it for the episode. We've got 30 seconds left, so we'd better wrap this up. Thanks for tuning in and listening to the GC Sunscast. I'm your host, Shane, and on the line is Tom. Go Suns!
Go Suns!